nada. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to see you again this week. I'm with Tharamaroa here. We are going to have a nice coffee online. Hello, Tharamaroa. So nice to have you here with us.
Hi, Gemma, how are you? Thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you. How are you? How is everything?
Yeah, everything is good. This year it has been kind of interesting, I think, for everybody. But things are moving great, and so we have managed to work on some exciting things, and so it has been a challenging year, I think, for everyone, but it has come with
Yes.
its bright side, so I'm happy.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yes.
Yeah, so Tharamaroa, can you tell us a little about yourself and your background so the people can understand a little about you?
Yes, of course. So I'm an architect. I come from Venezuela, which is a country in Latin America. I studied architecture. I graduated in 2015, and so immediately after I graduated, I started to work with a laboratory of innovation, and we used to work with communitarian projects and bottom-up initiatives. And so I basically developed my experience in the career through social innovation and communitarian projects. And so what we did basically was innovate in the way we approach communities and how we build architecture. So it was pretty much like a startup, but a laboratory of innovation in the field of architecture. So we had a really interesting team of architects, designers, and then we created a editorial project. And there I had the opportunity to be the chief of the editorial unit, and then I did some project coordination and management. And so we had the opportunity to be involved very early in my career with very interesting projects with which we won awards internationally and had the opportunity to travel. And so that's basically how everything started about with brAIMS.
Oh, that's really nice. But
Yes.
it's interesting because you have built a technical team without having technical background. How
Yes.
did you do that?
Yes. So actually being an architect, when I decided to start brAIMS, it was because we had a problem. It was really challenging for us to fund the practice. And so, as I said, back then I ran the editorial unit and then I was managing projects. And so I had little time to look for funding opportunities. So this was a very high consuming task. And so back then, that was 2017, I was like, okay, listen, there must be something in the internet that helps me do this, like run this process faster, like somebody has to be creative, like where are the grants, like how do I apply, where do I manage, like the things. And so I couldn't find really anything. And that was when the idea of brAIMS came about. And so I started to work independently and like run the projects, and I arrived to Spain with no technical experience and decided to jump into the technical
Wow.
world of the startups. Yes, because we know like the best way to learn things is by doing it. So
Yes.
I was a living proof of that. As architects, we know this, right? Like you need the technical skills, but you only truly learn things by doing. And
Exactly.
so I said to myself, listen, I'm going to jump and do this, and I will learn during the process. And so I actually stumbled along a very acknowledged accelerator program that's called Y Combinator. And they have this online course of a startup school. And so back then I was alone. I didn't have a technical team. And I was like, I didn't have also any friends, technical developer friends, because I'm an architect. And so all of
Yeah.
my friends were artists and like graphic designers, and my friends were also architects, so I never really like had any contact with like
Wow.
developers and the technical work. And so I was pretty much like, well, listen, where do I find these people, because I don't know nobody.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So yes. And so there's one day there's this talk with Michael Siebel, which is one of the YC partners, which is right now the CEO of Y Combinator. And so he was like, listen, if you need anything, just write me an email. There's two types of people in this world, the people who are going to write me an email and people who are not going to write me an email. And so back then I was really like, I don't know where I'm going to find a team. And so I said, like, I'm going to write him an email. And I really literally just wrote an email like, listen, we're building this. I don't know where to find like a technical team. And so the answer was like in one line, he answered like, make a list of your friends, ask for referrals, start contacting people, or put a hold on your startup, join another one so you can make friends like in the technical work.
Hmm.
And that's it, like doing that. And so I said like, okay, this is really practical advice. And I literally like
Yes.
did a list of friends who might have a developer friend. And so I
Wow.
was like writing people like to test what were we going to do. And one day, so I talked to a bunch of people and I received like a lot of introductions to developers back then. But one day I was talking to one of my best friends, and one of the things they say is like, these people have to be your friends. Like, it's great if you know them by referral because
Hmm.
this is people who you're going to be working for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's not like just someone you can just pick from anywhere. And so one day I was talking with one of my best friends, and she was like, I was telling her, like, listen, I'm doing this. I don't know how am I going to find this person? Back then, it seemed like finding a boyfriend, like when you don't, but you don't know where to go to date. And so she was like, "Oh, one of our friends came the other day to the house, and he's actually a developer, and he has been having like a bunch of interviews here because he just came to Europe, and so he is working in Barcelona, but he was here in Paris, and then he comes from doing some jobs in Holland. So if you want, I can put you in contact." And so I was like, yeah, that works perfectly great. And so she tells me like she sends me the number, and then we start talking. And he's like, listen, I'm going to help you because I really think like this is an interesting project, so I will work with you through the MVP.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, to build the MVP, and then we can see what happens. And so I said like, yeah, definitely, because I didn't know anything back then. Like, okay, it was the person who said yes, and he seemed to have, because he at that point he was at a very good job,
Hmm.
working with a good software development company. And so we started, and so he brought all his friends, and so that's how I built a technical team.
Wow.
And so my current tech co-founder, which is amazing, who has built Miguel Peñalosa, who he has built 90% of the tool, worked with him and heard about what we were building and said to him like, listen, I want to jump in because I really like this. And so what if because he was helping him like building some stuff. And so he was like, what if more than helping, I just jump on board with the project? And so at the end, they actually like switched places because one of them, he decided to follow up his corporate career. And so now he's working with Rakuten. And so Miguel stayed with us, and we really like bonded, and it was an incredible experience.
Oh, that's great.
Um, and that was how I did it, but it was actually like a chain of events. And now we have a full development
Wow,
team.
that's amazing story, but it's good because this shows that if you go for it and you know what you want, you can do it. Because
Yeah,
a lot of people are still in that moment that, oh, I don't have a team, I don't know, and they don't
yes,
continue. So you have to push and you have to, yeah,
yes.
that's really
I
good.
I do feel like being an architect, um, and managing teams, you
Yeah,
just
of course.
know, um, that you're able to build a team no matter where you are and what are
Hmm.
your skills, because we used to work with several people. So,
Hmm.
and as an architect also, I do have that learning that we don't know all of the skills. But what we do is like manage a really complex thing, which is building a building. And so
Hmm.
you are not the people who builds the concrete or the people who lays like the electricity or the engineer, but you just know about all
Hmm.
these sectors. So I do feel like that background that I have helped me into
Hmm.
believing that
Yes.
I could build a technical team, even though if I didn't have the experience.
Yeah, that
And so
helps.
that's that's also, I think, it's also not fair to say to people like they just stay like that. I also feel like it's different just trying to figure out ways if you actually have no idea
Yeah,
where to
that's
look
true.
for. But it's true that you have to ask I mean, I think that the,
I
the
think
key
what you,
thing.
I think your background helped, but also the attitude of the people, because maybe
Yeah.
you talk with 20 architects and they say, no, I wouldn't do it. So it's also
Yes.
the attitude, because
Yes, that's true. That's true.
it's a combination. Maybe you have
Yeah.
it easy because of your background, but I know also people that they build a team without knowing anything, but they talk to people and they ask for help. And it's good to
Yeah.
know how to ask for help too.
Yeah. That's true.
Not
That's true.
easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's true. It's something that we definitely need to learn as entrepreneurs.
Yes. Yeah, well, it's really interesting. And when you have
Mm.
an idea or you have a project, how can you do to
Mhm.
transform it into a company? How do you?
Well, that is a very interesting process. Um, for example, for me, it was actually a challenge coming from being an architect because we manage projects. And so projects end up into buildings or like things that you create. And so actually thinking about, for me, it was all about like designing like what a business model will be
Hmm.
for the company we're creating, because it's different like when you have an idea, oh, I want to connect people and I want to, but like you truly have to provide value, know where is your service, where is your user pain point, and so you have to create um, actually a system. So you're designing a system
Hmm.
of how to provide a service, give back, and then get paid in return, which is actually a company, what a company does. Um,
Yes.
and so in that process, I think one of the key things was um, figuring out what it was that we were selling. So, for example, we connect people, and so we're providing access, and so customized access, premium access, statistics around that, how we help you take some time off into the search for investors. Those are the things that we sell and that we provide as value to our users. And so it was also for us, for example, a challenge of how do you scale this? So how were we able
Hmm.
to design something that a lot of people can use? And so it could be, I mean, you've seen companies that they have a company and a business in 2 seconds because it's a very clear, straightforward one to place. For us, it was a bit of figuring out what were the things, because there's so much that you can do in the field of entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
There's so many ways you can monetize. You have the model from accelerators, and then you have the model of premium services, and then you can do advertisement if you build communities. So there's so many things that you can do to build a company
Hmm.
in the sector. The market is huge. Um, and I just think that for us, it was actually having the time to say, okay, let's just build this, put it in the hands of the people, figure out what is it that they're giving back and what is actually creating like growth and referrals. And so people started to talk about us, and then we got like contacts, and it was like, okay, we have the parts, because you
Yes.
say like, oh, we love that all of these parts will work, and then you see that
Yes.
some of those are going to work, and some of those are not going to work. And so I do feel like it's important to turn a project into a company to actually have a revenue model behind it, like something that you're selling to someone. And I
Hmm.
just recently saw like an advice from an investor. He's called Gary V. He'd invested in Twitter
Oh
in the
yeah,
early
I know.
days and
Hmm.
Airbnb. And so he was like, listen, you have to build a container. What is it that you're going to like sell? Because this is a business. I mean, it's amazing if you have a
Hmm.
project, but a company has revenue and has expenses, and so you need to like
Yeah,
you need to truly figure out what is it that you're selling.
exactly.
And so I think that that's key. Even for us, that was like a key piece of advice to truly understand what it was that we could sell. Because we were like, okay, we're building all of these things that we know founders need, but what are the things that people are actually willing to pay us for?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's
Important.
because we can do, yeah, important because if not, how would we live? Um, and how do we make it grow? And so I do feel like that is that is a key
Okay, really interesting.
thing.
So when you start with the development, what's the best way to make decisions about your product? Because I think this is also a challenge when you are starting.
Yes, when you're starting, this is a challenge. So, Miguel, it's that I got really lucky. He's an amazing technical developer. He has a lot of
Okay.
knowledge on technologies, and he's at a point in his career where he leads development teams. So I actually
Hmm.
learned a lot about this from agile methodologies, and so the best way to do it is to say like according to value. What is the value that we can provide to users, and how that value that you can provide to users turns into features. And then you have like brainstorming. You can have brainstorming sessions where you say like, listen, we think that to improve users' engagement, we need to create a feed. I don't know. So
Hmm.
people needs to have a place where they exchange because we have seen that people react to our posts, and every time we talk to someone, um, people is in need of networking, for example. And so you will do a meeting with all of those things, and then you prioritize. And the way you prioritize, which is where my knowledge came from, is through users' feedback. That's the
Yeah.
safest way to do
Hmm.
it, especially in the early days where everything is pretty much like an hypothesis. So everybody in the team is like, we have to try this, we have to try this, we have to try this. And you have so much time to test things, so you have to actually make a choice. And so um, and also to avoid friction, I think it's important in teams in the early days because everything is a bet. So
Hmm.
nobody truly knows what is
Exactly.
going to work. And so, for example, as I started as a solo founder, I did have like a pretty clear idea of what I wanted to see like in the product, like in
Hmm.
the first MVP, like what I needed to test.
Yes.
And it was
Yeah.
pretty much like, listen, I have been thinking about this. I have this problem. I want to see this. And so we got that like the first time. And so, for example, Miguel was like, okay, let's build that. And he's pretty much like, let's build it. We can test that and see what happens with the users.
Yes.
If it's logic and if we can cover all of the corners, we can build it. And so that's the way you do it. And so for us, it worked like, listen, we all agree like we can provide, I don't know, funding opportunities for the users. Yes, we all agree on that. Do we agree that we want to invest efforts into building this? Yes, we want to invest efforts into building this. And how much time are we going to do this? Okay, we can have
Yes.
this done in 2 weeks. Okay, let's do this test. And then you actually become good at doing that. You have to repeat that
Yeah,
process
you create the
thousands of
process.
times. Yes. And so every time, like you have in the technical terms, you have some things that they call epic tasks
Hmm.
and epic stories, which means that you have it's a long run to get to to there in terms of development. And so once you have reached that point of like, listen, we have reached an epic story. Like when you see all of those points finished, is very good as a manager to
Hmm.
identify that that's a good point to collect feedback from the users and then do
Yes.
again the session of brainstorming. And so then you repeat the process
Hmm.
again. And so that way you're able to execute, launch, but also have like the team involved in like the
Hmm.
vision because that's also
Yeah,
hard.
that's
Like
important.
development, you can get lost like into building. And it's actually a good opportunity to say like, we started this for this reason. So we
Hmm.
need
Yeah,
to
to
like,
keep it there
yes, like
in the view.
you need to keep it there. We need to see this. This is what we wanted to do, what we want to achieve. Um, and so that's the way we do it. And I think it has worked. I mean, also, this is completely Miguel's. He's like, we need to build the minimum. So he would be like, if I, for example, we're all about now of automatizing all of our events and communication. So if I get to him
Hmm.
like with a problem, like, listen, I'm sending 1,000 emails. I cannot do this. This doesn't scale. So he will go in and be like, okay, what is the first email you sent? What is the most relationship? And so he starts like, okay, I'm going to
Yeah,
automatize this
let's
with
take
the
it
minimum,
like.
like a title. It goes like a title. We're going to put the logo, and we're going to send a message to the people like, thank you for joining us. And so we build that, and he just like ships it. So we test that, and then we optimize, and then you say like, oh, listen, we need to improve like the subject line because people is not opening the email. Or we need to
Hmm.
like add a picture that talks about the event so people don't have to like jump
Yeah.
in. Or like we're having like investors outside of the platform because we're managing everything manually. And so I give completely the credit to him. He's always
Oh, that's
like
great.
ship the minimum, like, but just launch it. And so with everything that we have, like, I don't know, for example, we just launched a new home, and we have like sectors, and so he's like, okay, let's just launch the most important part, and then we launch the other one, and then we launch
Hmm.
the other one, and that's how, like, honestly, like step by steps, we have been able to build like a complete tool with full processes. But I think that's key in the early days. So just like ship fast,
Yes.
ship the minimum, and just like keep your team
Test.
engaged with the vision, and then prioritize
Hmm.
according to the feedback of the users. Those
Yeah.
are three basic things.
Yeah, I think it's really important to listen to the feedback. This is
Yes,
really, really important because they can not everyone tell you, but the ones that tell you is really valuable.
yes, yes. No, so
Yes.
for example, for us, I can tell like an interesting story that happened to us. Um, in June, we launched our first goal
Hmm.
for founders and investors. And so we received 149 requests of companies, and that meant like 300 signups in 3 days. And so
Wow,
we like grew a lot.
it's
It was
big.
big. We were like crazy, like answering like people's emails and support. And so we lost all the information. Like we had a problem with Amazon because we had like a big growth in a moment, and so we
Uh-huh.
had this thing like replaces because it
Hmm.
gives you like larger storage, and but they erase all of the users' data. And so we had to onboard 300 people and said to people like, listen, we lost your information.
Wow.
Honestly, we don't have it. Amazon doesn't have it. It's like we apologize, but we truly want to help you in like connecting you with investors. We need you to like fill your company information again. And we had like, I can tell like 90% of the users came back and
Oh,
refill like
that's really
all
good.
the information. And that was amazing. And everybody
It's
was
a
like,
big percentage.
yes, like listen, everybody was like, um, we know this, we're founders also, we have been there. And so
That's important.
but yes, but we have I make a huge effort to keeping the connections close. So we're always like, what do you think about it? What is it that you
This is really
need?
important.
Um, and so I feel like the user knows like we're there. And I think this is an advice that one time that we did a mentoring session with you, you were pretty like, listen, you need like people needs to be with you along with the process. If they know like what you're building, they will know like how they will be glad to join you in the process. When this is working really, really well, they're going to be proud to be sharing it, to see the progress.
Yes, that's true.
And
And
so,
when you make them feel part of it, they help you.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
that's really good.
and that, yeah, and that has been truly amazing with the brAIMS community.
Oh, amazing. Tell us about brAIMS. What is brAIMS and what was your motivation to start? Your needs, but
Yes,
also how did you say, okay, I need to do something? Tell us a little about it.
yes, this is a funny story actually. Also, I feel like I never thought I would be this type of person who had like a story for everything. But so basically, brAIMS is like we are an entrepreneurs network, and our work is to better connect founders with each other and with investors and resources. And so what we mostly do is help fundraising founders at this moment to connect to get warm interest to investors. So
Mhm.
the fundraising process is really large, and you have to contact thousands of people. So we help you like getting you into the door. That's what we have been doing and building this year. And so we also create events for founders on the key topics that you need to know as a founder on the early stages. And so
Great.
that came about. brAIMS was actually going to be my master's research project on the source of like financial resilience in isolated context because that was what I was doing back then. And so I was living in Venezuela at the time. And had literally no resources. Like, I mean, we worked with bottom-up initiatives, so it wasn't like I made huge loads of money being an architect. Well, we won awards and etc., but it wasn't like I had any like savings to jump and to build a company. And so I applied to two universities, and then I got refused because I was applying to an Erasmus
Hmm.
scholarship. And so by the second rejection letter, um, I was like, why am I waiting for someone else to give me a space to do this if I can do it myself? If I know this is something I have to be doing. And so I literally like received an email 8 in the morning that day, the rejection letter. I had breakfast and then I sat down and like wrote like funding opportunities for female founders.
Wow.
And then stumbled upon a Forbes list or acceleration program. And I just opened like they were 10. I just opened all of the tabs to read what they were. And like the first one, it was from this program that's Women's Accelerator, Women's Startup Lab, actually in Silicon Valley.
Hmm.
They had an open application
All
for
right.
this was May 2018, and they had an open application for August. And so I said, I'm going to do this. And so that was 10 a.m. probably, and I literally that application I was like opening and searching definitions. I didn't know what traction meant. I didn't know what
Yeah, I can imagine.
like runway. So all of these concepts from the business, I literally was like searching and searching like what does this mean? Like what are you asking me of what I'm building? And so I entered the application like at midnight. I had returned to my mom's house like back then. And so she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, listen, I'm going to jump and do this. And so that was a Monday. I sent the application, and the next day I received a letter of being selected for the program.
Wow.
And that was one of those things that you say like this is like a message. Even if I took it like even if I'm not accepted into the program at the end. I had the interview, but I was in Caracas, so the internet got
Hmm.
down, and I couldn't finish the interview, and so the program I couldn't do it. But it was like you have to do this, and so that was actually the push that was like I was okay. I'm going to jump, and I'm going to do this. And so then I kept doing applications and getting into a program in Spain. Um, that was later May, and so I traveled from one week to another to Spain
Wow.
with that 10 days suitcase, and I stayed. They told me like, listen, in here you have entrepreneurship residencies, so you can stay here.
Hmm.
And so we can stay as Venezuelans in Spain for 3 months. And I said, okay, I'm going to do that. And I called my mom like, Thursday, I'm staying in Europe. The worst thing that can happen is that I have to go back home. But I'm here. I mean, there's so many opportunities I can apply. They have like a particular route for entrepreneurs. The US doesn't have that today. It's the biggest ecosystem of startups in the world. But as a founder, you have to have a work visa.
Oh,
And
I
so
didn't know
that,
that.
yeah, it doesn't exist. So actually, like founders have hired themselves as freelancers, even if you're the CEO of the company, because it's tricky, like to get a visa, and so they
Hmm.
just hire you from, but you are not actually like working for the company, just like we're in
Yes.
America. And so, um, but in Europe, you have these countries like Holland has it, and France has it, and Spain has it, because Europe is kind of doing some efforts to get along into like the startups and entrepreneurship
Hmm.
thing.
Yes.
And so I decided to stay. And then after 7 months, I got my residency in Spain as an entrepreneur. And so that's pretty much the story of how I jumped into
Wow.
doing break.
I really like your
Yes,
attitude. Wow, you're brave. It's
it
really
was,
nice.
yes, it was a brave moment in my life. I was, I just think it was a combination of things. I just finished this job and we did amazing things. We worked with really dangerous communities back in my country,
Hmm.
and so I truly was at a point in life that I felt like I could do anything. I still
Wow,
do, but
that's
at
great.
that point I had it fresh. Like I was like, listen, I live in like one of the toughest. How more tough can this be? Like,
Well,
like
yes,
like I know how to be tough, and I know how to do risk, and I know how to like put the work, and so I just jumped.
wow, that's great. And what is the talking about brains again? What is the main goal that you have as brains?
So yeah, our main goal is to grow and scale a community for founders where you can find resources and connect people. Like that's our main goal. Like networking and introductions can truly change your company
Hmm.
trajectory. So we want to be a place where you don't have to like scout around people and stop people like jumping from LinkedIn or like Angel List or etc. And where you have your company, like put it all in one place when you have resources related to what you're doing. If you want to build a team, if you want to search for a co-founder, like if you're looking for funding, like networking events, that what we want to do is like the biggest promoter of connections for founders in the startups ecosystem. So that's actually our goal, like our long-term goal. Um, and truly promote development. Like companies help people. For me, it was like I see my friends even were like people that has ideas that can turn into companies and then give other people employment, and that way you actually promote
Hmm.
growth and the economy and like the value of all that we're building, especially like in the situation that we're living right now.
Yes.
So for me it was like, okay, this is a complex problem, but it's one that is worth investing
Hmm.
in figuring out how to better like move this faster, because the reality is like the world is changing so fast, and so people have a hard time like to adjust, like, okay, what is happening
Yes.
right now, like what is the next thing, like no, now investors are doing like this new way, and now founders are doing like this new other way. And so um and I mean there's some new law in France to promote entrepreneurship, but there's like you have to invest so much time into learning
Hmm.
about these things. And so the idea is like what we want to be is like, listen, we put all these things here for you to have them, to know them, to read them, and to find all the people that cares about this. Like, for example, you who have been, like, I know you have been mentoring so many programs,
Hmm.
like people like you that do this type of things because you love helping people that is building
Hmm.
things, because we all know when we do it that it's hard. That is one of the magical things of entrepreneurship. Like everybody knows it's hard, so
Yes.
everybody helps.
True.
So what we want is a place where you can find that people that is willing to help.
The toolbox. It can be like the
Yeah,
toolbox
yes,
online.
exactly. Like have it all there.
Yeah, so this is the. I was going to ask you the why people should join Brain, but I think you just explained it really good. So I will skip that question because
Okay.
yeah, I will call it like the toolbox for us for the entrepreneurs.
Yes, for the entrepreneurs.
And what are the more common kind of profiles that you can find there?
So one of the things that was interesting for us is that we saw the first people that responded so was very senior people in entrepreneurship. So we have been very lucky to have the support of people like you, for example, that has more than 15 years in the sector and that knows, that has really practical skills and knowledge about a
Hmm.
specific topic. And so you can find a large set of like founders that have plus 20 years of experience. We have people that have been investors before that are now founders.
Hmm.
You have early stage talents. In terms of demographic, we were pretty amazed that, I mean, you can start a company at any point in your life.
True.
And so this means we have first time founders, but we also have people who have been in the sector for more than 15 years. And that for us was really interesting because then the exchange is really valuable. And then from the side of investors, we have been really lucky also that we have had people like Swish Wani, for example, that he exited his first company at the age of 21, and so he now is on his second company, and so he does
Wow.
deals with Netflix, the NBA. Like we have had the amazing opportunity to have people like this to come to our events. Um, and so we have Torin Anderson, for example, also who is building an investment network for female founders and social innovation projects here in Europe. And we have had like people contacting us, like the Field Foundation, to reach for young students that are starting companies, and that way they can like draft and do the application process because they grant
Hmm.
$2,000 for 2 years to help people under 23 years old, so they don't have to like work and being able to build their company.
Oh, that's great.
And so that has been truly amazing. We are very focused also on like diversity, so you can find people like Michelle Walk and Ravina Anand, are the founders of Flika, that they work in like connecting female apprentices with female founders, and they have an incredible community of over 50,000 female founders worldwide. So I think it's like very interesting what has been happening with brands. Like you have early stage, we have college kids um, in our selection of companies, and we have like successfully raised founders also. So the demographics are pretty interesting.
So you can say that anything you need to create a business, you go there, you can find it.
Yes,
So
like
is the time now
basically,
in
like
the it will put in the comments the link to branch, then the people can subscribe because why not?
yes, I mean, the other day I was having a conversation, and I was talking with a previous investor. She is on the fintech sector, and she was like, the magic about this is that we work on connecting people. So she was like, I'm looking for a technical developer, and then the next week I got contacted by some people that did technical developments for startups. And so I was like,
Okay,
listen, I
yeah.
have someone who I just met like last week, like I can put you in contact. And so that's the great thing about this. That brings you can, if we don't have it, you definitely can be sure that I'm going to be thinking about that. And if anyone like comes around, we're
Mhm.
going to connect you. I do feel like that's our strongest value. We're always focused on like what are your needs, and from the network that we have, who is the people who might be helpful or make an introduction or referral to someone else.
Oh, that's
It will
great.
be like, oh, if you're in the US, so we have some people there, and like even with investors or like founders or like talent, so it works like in these key things or organizations. For example, we just partner with Business France, or even if you like founders want to come to France, then we have like the direct channels to provide the information, because sometimes it can get tricky to know like truly
Hmm.
processes. And so yeah, anything about entrepreneurship actually.
Wow, that's amazing.
In
Tharamaroa.
early stage.
Yeah.
Yes, early stage entrepreneurship, because Series A's and like larger things are a different set of full of knowledge. But like early stage entrepreneurship, we have been building a network towards that.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very
Yeah.
much because it was really interesting. And I
No,
think it's
thank
going
you.
to be really interesting for the audience also.
I think I'm so excited. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share our story and what we do. So
Awesome. Okay.
anytime.
Okay, great. Thank
Until
you.
the next one.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.